Hi, I'm Karen.
And I'm Craig.
Welcome to the Libro.fm podcast, where Craig and I talk to authors, narrators, booksellers, and more.
This month's episode is actually a little different than normal because Karen and I recorded it live in person, which we've never done. We went on a team outing, I guess, to Nashville with both Karen and I and the rest of our product team. And we got to do a ton of awesome stuff, including record a live podcast with Ann Patchett in her bookstore.
And huge shout out to you, Craig, because this was inarguably the most complex audio setup yet. And I don't know how you figured it out. So I'm glad it worked.
The internet. Thank you, YouTube.
Bless the internet.
Just Googling how to record podcast in person. It involved renting equipment. That's all. After that, it was relatively easy.
10 out of 10. You did great work.
We'll see how it sounds.
Had you ever been to Nashville before?
I had never been to Nashville. I had never been to Tennessee at all.
Oh, okay. All right. And what's your hot take? Yes. I went to college in Kentucky, which is very close to Nashville. So I have.
Oh, yes. I remember this because you were very excited to talk to a cab driver about it. I'm remembering. It's all coming back.
Yes.
My hot take on Nashville is that I really enjoyed it. I'd never been, and I love seeing new places, and I had delicious food and good drinks and had fun. My favorite part was when we got to go to Ingram, though.
Me too. Tell the world about this magical facility.
Okay. So for people who don't know what Ingram is, and I guess why would you if you're not in the book industry, but it is a gigantic warehouse where they create books. Literally, there's conveyor belts and books are just pouring off of them, and it's amazing. So we got to go and have a tour of the facility, and it was very secretive. No, we couldn't take pictures. We couldn't take videos. Unfortunately, the entire time I just wanted to film the entire experience. They had paper rolls as big as cars.
The paper rolls are my favorite.
Yes.
The woman that gave us the tour told us if you unrolled one of these paper rolls, it was 7 miles long, and I cannot stop thinking about that.
Yes, and so we just got to see, it was amazing, every aspect of a book being made, from printing the pages to folding to the covers and glue, and it was amazing. I was like a little kid. It felt like a Willy Wonka moment.
Really did. Yeah. The books were flying all around, literally, just popping out of machines, and glorious.
Yes, it was lovely. We won the golden ticket. So that was probably my favorite part, to be honest.
I feel like I won the golden ticket when I walked into Parnassus Books, which we will talk about a lot on this episode. But was that not one of the most adorable bookstores you've ever seen?
It was amazing. It was so cute. And Anne was lovely, and we got to meet her dogs. And they have this little kids section where you can walk through a little tunnel to get into it, which I did, of course. I have a video literally of me walking through it.
Huge shout out to the booksellers at Parnassus, because once we got done recording the podcast, we were all walking around, creating our stacks of books that we were about to purchase. And one of the booksellers came up to me, saw what I was holding, walked me around the store and said, "But you also need this one then, if you're going to read this book." And very dangerous and very effective.
Yeah, those were the best booksellers ever.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like they had just read every book and had the best opinions and were able to guide us. It was lovely.
It was.
I bought more books than I'm gonna say out loud because it's embarrassing.
I couldn't get my suitcase to zip to go home.
Oh God.
It was bad.
Yes, but also amazing.
True.
Speaking of Parnassus Books, do we want to get into the interview, and then after the interview we will talk more about books and Nashville?
Absolutely. That sounds fantastic.
Welcome to the Libro podcast, Ann.
Welcome to Parnassus Books.
Yes. For the listeners, we are literally sitting in Ann's bookstore in Nashville, Tennessee. Parnassus Books is absolutely gorgeous. I'm finding it almost distracting. I'm looking at all the books. I can see Gunkel from where I'm sitting, which is one of my recent favorites in the past couple of years. So thank you so much for having us here.
I'm so glad you're here. You're going to have to show me that book too.
It is on the book club favorites.
Oh,
is what I can see from here.
Good.
Yeah, we were talking about starting coming here to do this podcast. And we're like, it'll be so nice, like with actual human beings. Like normally we do this, and I'm like in my sad little office alone,
So
you know, with
two-dimensional on
the
Zoom.
shades drawn, you know.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, this is actually the first time Karen and I have met in person, funny enough.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, that's wild.
Yeah.
We've worked together for 2 years.
And have you done these in other bookstores?
We haven't.
This is our first live
this
podcast.
is the first
Oh
one.
my gosh.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, I'm
It's always
so honored.
We always just do it on Zoom. So this is much more fun, where I can like see you and like see your cute dog walking around.
That's
and like
right.
there's
Read
a more...
the body language.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We do have some questions from our booksellers specifically about Sparky. So everyone will be very happy to hear that Sparky is present,
Right?
wandering around. And Anne, I wanted to tell you, it was amazing last week. So I have an older sister that lives in Cincinnati, and she out of nowhere reached out to me and said, she sent me an Instagram video of this bookstore.
Oh,
This bookstore looks amazing. We should go on a like sister date to Nashville and go to Parnassus. And I said, I have to tell you something. I'm going there next week. She's a little miffed at me right now that I have like gotten here before her, but we will be back to do that.
Cincinnati is not far away.
Exactly.
She
Yes.
can very
A quick
easily
drive.
get here.
It's time for a road trip. Yeah, last night when we were kind of putting the finishing touches on our script here, we were kind of making a shopping list of what books we wanted to buy once we got here. So the second this podcast is done, I am going to be filling a tote bag of books, I believe. So,
Excellent.
yeah.
Excellent.
We're excited.
That's why we lure you in.
Yes. It was the long game. The only reason you agreed to do the podcast was so that
That's
you can
because I thought there
get us-
could be some sales in it.
Exactly.
So you don't just listen to books. You read books on paper.
Yeah. We so we've talked about this a ton, but we absolutely, I sometimes listen to an audiobook at the same time as reading the paper one.
You mean word for word?
Yeah, like following along.
Oh my God.
Especially with fantasy, I find a lot of fantasy narrators are just they do the voices and accents, and it's so like cinematic or whatever. And I'm like, I've told Karen this before, but I'll like be listening to it while I'm like driving or walking or whatever, and then I get home and I open the paper book and I'm like, it's not as good in my voice. So I'll like throw my AirPods on and be like being read to, but while also reading. It's a lifestyle, Anne.
That's so interesting because I went through this period of trying to read all of Shakespeare, and I got all of the plays on DVD, and I would read it, but then I would watch it closed caption for the hearing impaired.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, my comprehension just went through the roof. If I could see it being acted and also read it and listen to it, that's what really put it into my brain.
I love subtitles. I don't ever watch movies without subtitles. And sometimes when I go to a movie in the theaters, I'm like, I wish I could turn the subtitles on. You know, like they should make like special glasses where if you put them on, you can see the subtitles.
It will scroll across the bottom.
Right. Do you ever go to opera?
I've been to a
Yes.
singular opera. It was a Burke and Hare opera, actually.
Oh,
Yeah.
interesting.
It was amazing.
They have the super titles, and in most operas they're above the stage.
Yep.
But at the Met, they are on the back of the seat in front of you.
Oh.
And you can punch through 12 different languages. And it's great because you're not flipping your head up and down.
Yep.
Right.
It stays in your sight line so you can read and watch.
That's brilliant.
It is brilliant. It is.
Wow. Okay, to the opera after this, after
Well,
we record.
After we
And what you-
record, buy
right.
books, then the opera.
Then the opera.
And then, of course, when you are reading the opera, what you realize is that they are singing the same 3 sentences over and over and over. and
Oh,
over again.
interesting.
Yeah.
Huh. Well, I think this is probably a moot point because you are very well known in the book lover community. But for anyone who happens to be listening to this
Yes.
who may not know about your work, would you give a brief introduction to yourself?
Okay. I am 58 years old. I was born in Los Angeles. I've lived in Nashville since I was 6. I published my first book, The Patron Saint of Liars, when I was 26 in 1992. I have written many, many, many books. And about 11 years ago, almost 11 years ago, opened Parnassus Books with Karen Hayes, who was my business partner. And then a few months ago, Karen was the in-store manager, and she said she wanted out. She wanted to retire. And so I bought her out, and I now own this whole bookstore,
Wow.
which is hysterical because I never wanted to own a bookstore and I never meant to own a bookstore. I just met this really interesting, driven person who was like, I want to open a bookstore, but I don't have any money. And I was like, I don't want to open a bookstore, but I have money. I'll pay for the bookstore, and I'll be the silent partner. This is what happens.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations?
Thanks.
Question mark.
You know what? It's been nothing but joy.
Awesome.
It's been such a great thing in my life. So it's something I never in a million years would have done. I was not one of those writers who wistfully walked into bookstores on tour and thought, oh, well, someday I really hope I get one of these for myself. It's like I never looked at a Newfoundland and thought, I wish I had one of those.
Yep.
Nope. But now I do. I do have a
And
Newfoundland.
here we
really?
are.
No, the bookstore is the Newfoundland.
Oh.
It's a metaphor. That's what writers do. We speak in metaphors.
I was like, so Sparky gets to come to the bookstore, but Newfoundland, no. Oh, that's amazing.
Actually, our floor manager does, in fact, own a Newfoundland. So they are on my mind. Yeah.
Amazing. I have a dog too, and he's smaller, not as small as Sparky, but pretty small. But he looks like a big dog. He looks like an Irish wolfhound. So whenever we go to like the dog park, they're like, "Is he an Irish wolfhound?" I'm like, "Absolutely not. He better not be."
Wow.
I live in a small apartment.
That must be a really good look.
Yeah. He looks exactly like an Irish wolfhound, but like 40 pounds instead of like 200 or whatever.
Wow. Then you know what you say. You say, it is an Irish wolfhound. We just left him in the dryer too long.
like a
I'm
knitting
stealing that the
project.
next time I'm in the dog park.
Yes, just got a little smaller.
We felted him.
Yeah, felted. Yes.
Yes.
Well, one of the questions we had, actually, this is a perfect transition in terms of finding yourself fully owning a bookstore. One of the questions we love to ask bookstore owners specifically are two things. What has surprised you about owning a bookstore? Things that you didn't see coming about this life, or what do you wish people knew about owning a bookstore? I think people, myself included, I have a lot of assumptions about what it's like. I'm like, oh, it's just beautiful all the time, and you're curating staff picks lists and putting up these, beautiful displays on the wall. But I'm sure there is a lot more than what meets the eye. So
Everything was a surprise to me because I went from having no interest and no intentions where bookstores were concerned to owning one so fast that I never had sat around and thought, oh, I bet it's going to be like this. I did not gather expectations. Still, the thing that's been surprising and so intensely pleasing is how much I love the people that work here, and that it is like the bar at Cheers and the coffee shop on Friends. It is this place where we come, and I often say this is the island of misfit toys.
I love it.
It's like everybody here is way too smart to be here, but they also probably wouldn't really be anyplace else. That sort of built-in friendship. I feel like I have created a place where I store my friends, and I can come in at any moment and talk about books. And we argue about books and laugh about books and everything else too. But that's like a fantasy. That's just fantastic. The thing that people assume about bookstores is best summed up in a John Grisham novel. I know John Grisham. I adore him. He is such a good literary citizen. He is such a good guy. He doesn't take himself seriously at all. But he wrote a book called Camino Island. I think that's right. And it was his one time in the bookstore. He doesn't go to book tour. He doesn't do book tours very often, but he came here, and John Meacham and I together were interviewing John Grisham. So it was quite a scene, and we were really cracking up. But it was a novel about a guy who owned a bookstore on an island, and he wore linen suits, and he made espresso, and he read all the books and he had sex with all the visiting authors. And I was like, dude, I mean, do you think we have that kind of time? Like, what are you talking about? And he was like, I just make this up. Ease up. It doesn't mean anything.
Imagination.
But I think that's what people think.
Yep.
They think that we're well-dressed, that we've read everything. My neighbors stop me all the time while I'm walking the dog at 6:30 in the morning and say, "Oh, do you have volume 7 of the Percy Jackson series?" I'm like, what the hell do you think I am? Like,
And then you tell them that there is no volume 7, right? Yeah.
Do you think I'm the inventory system? Every day somebody says, well, do you have such and such a book? How would I know?
You're like, fantastic question. Come to the bookstore at 10 a.m. and I will look it up for you on the computer.
People actually think that I have read every
book.
single book
that's
in
in
the
the
store,
store, yeah.
and that I ordered it because I read it.
Yep.
Like, wow, you really give me an awful lot of credit.
I do customer support at Libro.fm, and people think I have read every book as well. I get a lot of emails that say, I heard about this book that's about a woman in her 40s who's a
Oh my
scientist,
God.
and it's this and this and
Oh,
this. Do you
that's
know what it
every
might
day,
be?
every day.
I'm like, huh.
It had a blue
I'll
cover.
try. Yep.
And I heard about it on Morning Edition 8 weeks ago.
Yep.
Do
Okay.
that book with the guy. You know the one with the
I
guy
know.
in it? He has the hair. you
And
know?
you think it's a joke? It's like the oldest bookseller joke, but it's not a
But
joke.
it's-
It's our life.
Yes.
This is exactly what goes on all day long. And we love it.
How do you answer those questions? Like for me, I would be like after the 10th time, which would be like day 3 of owning the bookstore, I'd be like, enough is enough.
You know what
How do you
is
answer them nicely?
so amazing is, I swear to you, like 95% of the time we figure it out.
Yep.
You
That's
know,
amazing.
it's just there are enough
Well, that's why
people.
they keep asking.
Right?
All the answers.
There are enough people on the floor who read all these different things, and we can pull people in.
Yep.
And somebody can piece it together. Chelsea is like, oh yeah. Sissy, oh yeah, I can. All right, I can figure. I mean, they're just some people that we haul them out of the back.
You triangulate
Yeah.
the, yep.
Yep.
With our powers combined.
Right, exactly.
When we so we interviewed Emma Straub,
My
who's
my daughter, my sister,
Yeah.
Emma. Yeah.
so another author, bookstore owner. She had mentioned to us that the bookstore is kind of like a living, breathing thing in the way that, she had a bookseller that was really into horror. And when that bookseller worked at the bookstore, they had an amazing horror section. And then when that bookseller went on, they still have horror, but it's not as curated. And, like as people come and go, the bookstore actually changes in some ways. Do you find that to be true for your bookstore?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially with anything in children's.
Oh,
It seems like that's the balance. There are some times in the history of the store that we just haven't had somebody. Well, we've always had like one person who is strong in children's, but never enough. But then we think, okay, from here on out, we're hiring people who know children. And then suddenly everything is children's. And middle grade and YA, we get way too strong.
Yeah.
It's like we overdevelop our children's muscles. And then we think, oh, we've got to shrink them down. Right now, we really need more adult nonfiction readers.
Sure.
But it is just that never-ending balance. But really, it's a balance that has to do mostly with children's.
So I read on your site that last year was your 10-year anniversary at the store.
Last November, yes.
Wow.
Congratulations.
Thank
That's
you very
amazing.
much. Yeah.
What an amazing thing for the community in Nashville here. And we were speaking of community on your About Us page on the site. You talk about how the bookstore is so much about community, including the name actually. And I was just curious, could you give us one? I would love to hear more about the name.
I'd love to tell you about the name.
All right, lay it on us, and then I'll get to my next question.
So we opened this store on November 15th of 2011. Karen Hayes and I met for the first time on April 30th, 2011. So that was our very small gap of I met you, I want to open a bookstore, to we're opening a bookstore.
It's real.
Yeah. The day we had lunch and we were introduced by a mutual friend, she had a business proposal and she said at the very end of that meeting, I want to name the bookstore Parnassus, because she was obsessed with the Christopher Morley novella Parnassus on Wheels. And her other big dream was to have a bookmobile, which we had a bookmobile. And at that moment, when she said that, I was like, okay, I don't know what Parnassus means. I don't know how to spell it. And it makes me feel dumb, right?
Yeah.
So I just think it's a terrible name for a bookstore. And she said, I've always wanted a bookstore named Parnassus. And it was one of those moments where I thought, okay, this isn't a compromise situation.
This is
either you get your way or I get my way.
Right.
I wanted to name the book Independent People after my favorite novel, Independent People by Haldor Laxness.
Okay.
So we, basically we both wanted to name the store after our favorite book.
Yeah.
And I finally thought, well, you're the one who's going to be working at the store, so you should get your way on this one.
Wait, but now she's gone,
and now she's gone. So what do? Throw out all the T-shirts and have new ones made that say Independent People?
Get a new sign made. I mean, what a pain in the ass.
Right, right. I've been branded, literally. I have been branded, and I can't get rid of it. And the fact is, you grow into your name. My stepson, who is the coolest person I know, just brilliant and cool, his name is Cecil, right? So Cecil is a really hard name to grow up with if you are not the coolest, most popular, most wonderful person in school. Yep. And it turns out he was. So then the fact that his name is Cecil Van Devender is absolutely fine.
Yep.
I couldn't pull that name off personally.
I could not pull that name off. When I was on the Colbert Report years ago, and I took Cecil with me because Cecil loved Colbert, and Colbert comes back and he's meeting everybody and sticks out his hand and Cecil goes, Cecil Van Devender. He was like,
full name.
Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? That is the coolest name in the entire world, which it is because he's the coolest guy.
Yep.
That's awesome.
So that's sort of the deal with Parnassus. Parnassus, if you don't know, is the mountain in Greece where the gods of music and dance and poetry were born. And because we're the Athens of the South, blah, 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 I still don't like the name of the store.
Oh, no.
I really don't. I still want to wake up and have it be Independent People.
Have you ever considered renaming it, or is it like too late?
It's just too late.
Yeah.
We're branded. Everybody knows us. If we change the name to Independent People, everybody would think that I had sold the store and somebody else had bought it.
I see.
Totally.
So,
yeah.
It's done. It's done.
I love that, like community aspect of it where like it's too late. Like everyone in the community knows the name and we're a fixture here. And being I think you mentioned earlier like you wanted the bookstore to be like almost people's like third place.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
And it is.
Can you tell us about an experience where like people have like a community experience that's meant a lot to you in terms of with Nashville, like whether it was like, oh my God, we had a book signing here and like this happened, or is there any kind of like stories that you've learned like that have happened to you here that have meant a lot?
Yeah, but I'm going to take it down to the smallest level.
All right.
Which is, I have a friend, a couple. I know both of them. I'm not super close to either of them, but I know them both. And one of them said to me that they were at home and one of them was like, I've got to go, pick up the kids. And the other one was like, well, I've got to go to work. And they both left the house in sort of a huff. And then 5 minutes later, they both found each other here, right? Because what they were both saying is, I just need 10 minutes to myself.
I need a moment.
I just need to get out of the house and have a minute. And they both came here. And that is exactly what I want this place to be. Sure. This is the place that if you have 15 minutes in between your doctor's appointment and picking your kids up from school, you can come here. And if your whole family goes out to dinner and you still have another hour to kill, or you have an hour before dinner, you can come here. It's like a place to be. And great, you buy something, I love that. But you don't have to buy anything. You can just be here. And I like to say you can't take your whole family to Anthropology after dinner. There's something for everybody, and everybody can go to their own little spot. My husband's a doctor, and last year we had the doctor Christmas party here, and it was the best Christmas party anybody had ever been to, because the extroverts could stand next to the food and talk, but the introverts just all went to the corners.
Yep.
They just all found a little spot in a book and they sat down and they had the best time. So
That's
you
amazing.
can really be yourself. Now, that said, I can tell you endless, fabulous stories. John Prine came when his book was out and he talked about his career and he sang, and it was so beautiful. Father Greg Boyle, who I just adore, from Homeboy Industries in Los Angeles, the world's largest gang prevention and rehabilitation program, came here with two of the homeboys and they told their stories, and it was spiritual. I mean, like, we walked out of this bookstore better people. And we've had Anthony from Queer Eye, and we've
cool.
had the head of the coach of the Lady Vols, so where you get an entirely different group of people. There are events where you have zero overlap, and events where you have the store crammed to the rafters with people who have never been in this bookstore and, dare I say, maybe haven't been in a bookstore in 20 years, but they're here. And they're like, God, this is beautiful. This is wonderful. And those are just endlessly incredible moments.
Okay, so what was it? Coffee, then opera, and then we're opening a bookstore.
Yes,
Right.
yes. That's today. That's our
Yeah,
agenda
yeah.
for today now.
Right.
That's
it.
amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that. Typically, Karen and I write all of the questions that we plan to ask, but given that we're in a bookstore and you run a bookstore, we actually opened up some questions to our other bookseller partners that are on Libro. So we got a couple of questions that we wanted to ask you. First off, mostly people would just want to say that they love you and thank you so much for what you do for independent bookstores.
I
Is that
love
correct?
them. I love you too.
Yeah, that's how everyone started a question.
Like,
I don't
oh,
really
tell
have a
Ann we
question,
love
just tell
her.
Ann we love her. The second question that we got, or really the first one, was how is Sparky doing? People want a Sparky update.
Sparky's great.
Yeah.
Sparky's really terrific. Sparky is on the Laydown Diaries every Tuesday, which is our little Instagram program that we started during COVID when the store was closed. And I kept thinking, we don't have any way to tell people about the new books. People know how to get the old books that they love, but like, what's coming out on Tuesday? And it became really popular. And so we're still doing it every single Tuesday. So people really follow Sparky because he is there every Tuesday. And I don't know if this is what you're talking about, but Sparky ruptured a disc in his back in January.
No.
And he had big spinal surgery and he did great. And so that was January. This is October, and he's just now going up and down the stairs. So Sparky's doing really well. We also have a lot of other shop dogs. There are 5 other dogs on staff.
Oh, wow.
And some days they're all here, and some days there's only one dog here. A lot of times they're all in the back because they're lazy. They're bums. And the person who receives our books is a guy named Peter King. And the dogs are so obsessed with Peter that they just stand back in the receiving room all day and stare at him. It's really crazy. Yeah. So.
That is a perfect segue into our next question, which is from I apologize if I butcher your name. It's either Andrea or Andrea from Bookstore One in Sarasota, Florida. And speaking of your Tuesday Laydown Diaries, she wants to know more about it. And do you guys rehearse for them before you record them?
We don't rehearse. We do one take.
Organic.
Nice.
We get in the morning, and man, I read galleys. It's all I do.
Yeah.
All I do. Reading books that aren't coming out for 4 months. And there are Tuesday mornings that I walk into the store and I look in the carts and I'm like, I have not read one single book. There is not a single book here that I have read, especially in the summer. It's torture. And so then you're reading flap copies, or you're basing it on the cover, or you're trying to just put together some little theme. And then September rolls around and I'm like, it's Tuesday. I've read 5 of these books. I can really be intelligent on this.
Why in the summer is it different? Are you just too busy hanging out at the beach and or like?
Oh, no. Summer books you read in February.
I
It's
gotcha.
that summer books aren't my thing.
Yeah.
I respect them. I'm glad they're here, but it's just like, it's a lot of mystery. It's a lot of romance.
Yep.
It's a lot of stuff I don't read. It's beach read.
Beach
And
reads.
I'm not a beach read. I personally am not a beach read gal.
Yep.
So you don't get literary fiction and nonfiction. That's my wheelhouse. As we said at the beginning, everybody's got their wheelhouse.
Yep.
So it's mortifying to have to show up and do your little program on Tuesday morning when you haven't read the books. And I wouldn't have known to read the books. To read those books, I would have had to have read them in February.
I see.
Yeah.
Interesting. I'm learning a lot about the the release cycles for summer reads.
And the whole thing that so many people don't know is that all books are published on Tuesdays, which is just something that fascinates people. I always say it's like horses leaving the gate for a race. They all have to leave at the exact same time. And the months, and I think about this as an author all the time, the months where there are no books. December, cookbooks, self-help.
Oh.
January.
Is it just because of gift books?
Yeah.
People are always buying.
Nobody is going to publish a serious novel in the middle of December.
Okay.
July, so dead. The last week of July. I've got a book coming out next summer, and I'm really thinking I'm going to publish on the last week of July.
Do it.
Because
Not even on a Tuesday. Do it on a Wednesday.
That they won't let me do. But then that's like homesteading. Like no one is there. And anybody who's receiving books on the last week of July, any bookstore in this country is going to be like, God bless you, Ann Patchett, for bringing us something to do today.
I can't wait for that day when that book is released. And I'll be like, she did it. She did it. It's here.
Yeah, absolutely.
One of the other things that came up in the feedback or the questions that the booksellers submitted to us for you, it's kind of a non-question question.
I'm good at those.
But folks were just very appreciative of how you have advocated for independent bookstores and for booksellers with your platform as an author and as an owner of this beautiful store. So can you talk a little bit about like what that journey has been like, becoming this huge advocate that people know you for
Right.
the book world?
Like I didn't know it was a job, and I have no memory of applying for it. And yet it is my job, and it's a really good job. And I like to say I am to independent bookstores as Julia Roberts is to Lancome mascara. I don't formulate it. I don't package it. I don't brand it. I just wear it. And I don't know how to work the cash register in this store. I don't know how to order books. The list of things I can't do is comically long. But for whatever reason, if some random bookseller stands up and says, don't order your books on Amazon, order them from your independent bookstore, go and shop local. It sounds like a scold a lot of times, and people will get their hackles up for whatever reason. If Ann Patchett says it, it's fine. And so I do. And I will say, if you order this book on Amazon, I will come to your house. I will hunt you down. It is fine with me to buy books on Amazon. I care that you read. That's the most important thing. A lot of people don't live near independent bookstores. A lot of people don't care about independent bookstores. Fine, get your books on Amazon. But you cannot come in to my store and shop and talk to my smart employees and soak up my ambiance and come to my author events and then go home and order your book on Amazon, because then I will follow you to your house. And if I say that, people are like, ha, 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 and they're scared too. They're like, whoa, Ann Patchett's coming after me.
Message received.
And message received. So that, I think, is what I do. It's that I can somehow, I can say the things that people are thinking, but coming from me as in the beloved author status, people are willing to accept it and hear it. And a lot of people just don't know. I always say people aren't bad, but they're stupid. And if you tell them what to do, they're like, oh, I get that. Oh, I want to have a tax base in my community. I want to create jobs in my community. I want to have a place to go when I'm mad at my husband and need to get out of the house.
I need that 10 minutes.
I want to have a place to go when my kid comes home and says, I need a copy of Animal Farm because I've got to read it by tomorrow. You know, like, oh, okay. Then if you don't support your independent bookstore, gardening shop, coffee shop, yarn shop, whatever it is, then they're going to go away. And when your kid comes home and wants that book right that second, you're not going to have that place to go. And I think that Libro is such a perfect example of this because people don't know that Audible is owned by Amazon.
Yep.
People don't know that they are giving Jeff Bezos more money to go to the moon by downloading their book from Audible. So it's my job to say, oh, okay, you don't know this, but in fact, if you get the exact same audiobook from Libro, you are contributing to your community, you're contributing to independent bookstores, and you're not sending Jeff Bezos to the moon.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
He's got enough.
Yeah.
God bless him. He's got enough.
He's going to be okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right?
Enough is enough. I think,
Right.
at this
It's like
point,
being in a bar. Jeff, you've got enough. We're cutting you off.
It's time to go home, Jack.
That's right.
You can't stay here.
So I want to make sure we could talk to you all day. We may overstay our welcome, but we want to make sure that we talk about your latest book, These Precious Days. And I know that you've talked about this in other forums, but I have to ask this question. Something that resonated with me so much at the beginning of this book was your journey through the pandemic as a writer. And you write in many different genres, but essays in this time were something that felt very accessible to you. They felt like the thing that the space that your mind wanted to go to during these times. Can you speak a little bit about why that was and what the journey of creating this book was like, given that you have so many genres that you are capable in and that are available to you?
We didn't know what the future was going to hold. And of course, that's the great joke because we never know what the future is going to hold. We may all be hit by a bus this afternoon. Yep. But the pandemic really brought that home. It didn't feel like the moment to start something long format because you think, am I going to die? Are the people that I love going to die? And I was also sharing my house with someone who was dying of recurrent pancreatic cancer, my friend Suki Raphael, who was living with us. And everything felt very immediate. I didn't want to plan something that was way out in the future.
Yep.
It was going to take me a huge amount of time. I wasn't even thinking in terms of writing a book of essays. I just thought, okay, today I can write about this. Today I can tell this particular story of life and what we're doing right now and what's going on. So it felt manageable and controlled and personal, and it was the right form for the moment.
Thank you. So that is so wonderful to hear. I write poetry, and I feel very, very similarly, and that's like they're moment by moment, kind of like this is this brief thing that I can encapsulate because that's what I have right now to give. And I had never thought about essays in that way, and that's really beautiful.
Well, if I could write poetry, I would have been doing that because I think that's exactly right. But it is about just being in the now, which is what we're all always hoping to achieve. But I thought that COVID was very helpful for making sure that you were living your life right in the moment.
Yep.
Are you guys going to ask me about audiobooks? Because I really do have some things to say.
Let's move there.
Yes. Yeah, that was actually perfect timing. Next,
I don't want to control your interview, but
that's beautiful. The next question on the list was, and we didn't flesh it out.
Actually, it just says
Craig,
narration question.
Narration and audiobooks.
Audiobooks.
Yes. I actually did have a question about audiobooks. So I saw that some of your books, mostly your novels, are narrated by someone else.
Right.
But a lot of your nonfiction, like These Precious Days, is narrated by you. And I'm just curious about that decision.
Okay. Well, it is actually a clear binary thing.
Yep.
All of my novels are narrated by someone else, and all of the nonfiction is narrated by me. I keep wanting to say nominated. I don't know where that was.
Nominated by you.
Nominated. I nominate this book. And I love recording audiobooks. That is my skill set. Being in an audiologist's box for 8 hours a day is my dream, with someone on the other side of the glass going, "Oh, you made a mistake. Do that again." I am so good. And directors tell me all the time they work with people who can stay in the box for 20 minutes tops, and then they have to leave and go take a walk around the block. Not me, man. I can stay in there until my stomach is growling so much that they're like, "We can't do this anymore."
Yeah, the mic is picking up. You need to go to lunch, Annie.
Right. Like, I can break the will of any director or producer on the other side of the glass.
If you, it seems like you just said, like, that's my dream. I want to do that. Like, why don't you do the fiction? Because I mean, I listened to These Precious Days and I thought you narrated it beautifully, and I like you. In my mind, you could totally do the fiction. So where does that?
Okay,
split come from?
in my mind, I could totally do the fiction too, but there is also someone who could do it better, and that's the line.
Sure.
You know, if I could do a really good job, but if somebody else can do a great job, I need to step back. The book that I just finished, that's coming out in the third week of July,
the third week of July on a Thursday,
right, has a first-person female narrator who has a voice that would be completely in my wheelhouse. And I had a moment of thinking, I could do this, I could do this. And then I just think, but, you know, if I could get Julianne Moore to do it, she'd do it better.
Yeah.
And that's...
Is that who's
Oh,
there?
no.
Okay.
No. Although I know her, so there's part of me, I'm like, I think I'm going to just send her a note saying, I'm going to put a flea in your ear.
Yeah. I was going to say, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised you've had other, like, pretty well-known actors read your books before.
Tom Hanks read The Dutch House, which just was one of the great audiobooks of all times. I mean, it was incredible.
Yeah.
He did such a brilliant job.
Did you, this is actually a question from one of our colleagues at Libro, and I didn't know if we'd get to it because the person was like, it's kind of a shallow question, but I want to know. So if it comes up, ask.
Yeah.
Did you get to meet Tom Hanks, and like, what was that? Like, did you get to work together on that?
I know Tom. We're friends.
Oh,
and that's
awesome.
why
No big deal.
That's why I asked him. People are so funny. They're like, how did HarperCollins pick Tom Hanks? How did they make that decision? And I'm like, are you out of your mind?
You're like, I sent a text message to my friend and he agreed to do it.
I was like, hey.
Hey, Tom, are you around?
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. And I thought, I was just like, I said to him, no pitches, no hits. Like, I don't in a million years think you're going to do this, but I'm asking you, right? I mean, it's no harm in asking. And he was like, well, that sounds like fun. Send me the book. Cool. I'll see if I like it. And I was like, oh my God.
Can you imagine if he was like, didn't like it. Not for me.
I can, because he wouldn't have said that, but he would have said, I'm not the right voice for this character. And that would have made perfect sense. Yeah. And I'll tell you what, this is the crazy part. He was my third choice.
Really?
Yeah.
Who are you able to tell us who the first two are?
So the first person I asked was John Lithgow.
Amazing.
Right?
Yep.
And he was like, oh my God, I'm trying. I just can't work it into my schedule. I'm so sorry. I asked Alan Alda. Same thing. I would love to do this. I can't. And then I was like, okay, I know 3 actors. I guess I'll just I'll ask Tom. And he was like, he wrote me back in 2 seconds. And he was like, ooh, that sounds like so much fun. Send me the book.
That's amazing.
And it was funny because then Alan emailed me and said, okay, you got Tom to record your book. Can you get him to do my podcast? And I was like, sure. Tom, can you do Alan Alda's podcast? And Tom did. And Alan was like, I just want you to know she asked me first.
Yes. That was my next question. I'm like, do they know the order in which they were?
We'll have to cut that part out if not.
They sort of all took bragging rights. And I have actually seen an interview with John Lithgow who was like, she asked me first. I did. I really did.
Tom's texting you, I was third?
Like, third?
I did the Polar Express, for Christ's sake.
Actually, what Tom said to me was, have you lost George Clooney's email?
So that is related to a question that our coworker had. Is Tom Hanks as wonderful as he seems? And that clarifies that yes, he is.
Tom Hanks is so fantastic. And we met because I interviewed him when his book came out
Cool.
in DC. And he said to me afterwards that he was really interested in owning a bookstore. And so he comes to Nashville. His wife, Rita Wilson, is a singer-songwriter and actor, producer, director. I mean, Rita's everything. So they come to Nashville pretty often, and he started coming to the bookstore to talk about how he might open a bookstore, which didn't wind up happening.
He's going to call it independent people.
Independent people.
No, he signs his name Hanks with an X, Hanx. So he wanted to call it Hanks Books. And it was a great idea that I think went by the by because he has 7 million things going on. But so that's how we got to know each other. He's also a tremendous reader. So anytime I send him a book or say, oh, I just read something you would really like, 2 minutes later, he's got it read.
Speaking of having 7 million things, this isn't in our script, it's just come to my mind, but being an author seems like it's a very much full-time job with like touring and interviews and podcasts and marketing and all the things, like, and also running a bookstore.
No,
seems like a very full-time job.
No. I don't run a bookstore.
Okay.
I own a bookstore.
Oh, okay.
Andy and Kat run the bookstore.
Sure.
Karen used to run the bookstore. But I don't. I mean, again, going back to the mascara analogy, sure. I just wear it. I just flaunt it. I just represent it. And
it's just a place for your Christmas parties.
That's exactly right. You know what? I feel fine about that. Yeah. I do a lot. I do a ton of publicity. I bring amazing authors in. Not that I schedule events. I surely do not do that. But, I can call Colson Whitehead and be like, hey, you owe me just a tiny bit. Can you come do this?
Emma said the same thing, actually, that she's like, I don't abuse it, but like I have connections in the book world and it was very beneficial to my bookstore.
That's right.
And she's like, I don't abuse that power, but like, I'm not going to say it doesn't exist either.
That's right. That's right. And when people say to me, I live in Plainview, Indiana, and I really want to open a bookstore. And I think that's really hard because the two things I have going for me is Ann Patchett, the Ann Patchett-ness, in which I can get people to come and do events. And that's where you make a bunch of money. Yep. And the other thing that we have is a great airport. Yeah. And that is so much.
You have a Parnassus in the airport, right?
We
It's
do.
Closed right now due to construction or something?
Right. It'll be open again after Christmas.
Nice.
But you've got to be someplace where there are direct flights.
Yep.
Unless you're Square Books or Lemuria Books in Mississippi, because they break all the rules and they get people to come. McLean and Eakin in Petoskey, Michigan. I mean, there are a few stores, but it's really hard to get on people's travel schedules if you don't have a great airport where you have direct flights.
That makes so much sense.
Nobody thinks about that. And I still haven't told you what audiobooks I love.
Right, Please do.
Yeah. We're getting for the listeners that we're literally in the bookstore and it's going to open soon. So before there's a bunch of people milling about,
we're racing the clock.
Yes. Tell us about what are you listening to right now?
Well, I'm so glad you asked. Thank you for that insightful question.
No problem. I am an excellent, host here.
Really, you're both knocking it out. Okay, so right this minute, as in what I was listening to this morning as I was brushing my teeth and driving over, is Elizabeth McCracken's reading the hero of this book. And this, I'm going to tie this back to another part of the story. I didn't realize when I downloaded it that Elizabeth was narrating it. Elizabeth is one of my best friends. I read the book early on in manuscript. She will be here Monday. I will be interviewing her. So I was planning on reading the book again, and I thought, no, I'm going to listen to it so I can talk about it during my Libro interview. And it's great. And one of the things that's so wonderful is how much I'm laughing reading it, how funny it is. When I read it as a pile of paper a long time ago, it's a book about Elizabeth's mom dying. Yeah. It's a novel about Elizabeth's mom dying. But I have been friends with Elizabeth since I was 25, and I knew Elizabeth's mom really well, and so I'm reading it in a very serious way. But when I'm listening to it, I can just, I know where her jokes are,
Yep.
and I know what she means to be funny, and she's not giving us something that's a heavy book. It's a deep book, but it's also a really joyful book and a funny book. And there is this huge pleasure in listening to something that I've read, which I recently discovered because I own a bookstore and I have so many books that I have to read at every single moment. The UPS guy comes to my house 5 times a day. Everyone in the world knows where to find me now that I own this bookstore. I mean, I am covered up and I never get to read things twice. However, I had read Kevin Wilson's new book, Now Is Not the Time to Panic. Kevin is also a good friend. I read the book a long time ago. I absolutely loved it. And I was going to Memphis a few weeks ago and I downloaded it. It was one of the advanced
listening
The
copies.
advanced
ALCs.
listening
Yep.
copies. Thank you very much, Libro folk. We all listen to those and
Oh,
appreciate them so, so much. Downloaded it and I was listening to it and I thought, and he wasn't reading it. Jennifer Goodwin read it and she did a brilliant job. But I thought, this is such a gift to have read a book. So I'm not reading it for plot. I'm not reading it to find out what's going to happen. I'm reading it to just admire the structure and the work and the thought that's gone into creating it.
Mm-hmm.
I got so much out of it. And that is so often my experience with audiobooks. It's like audiobooks take up 2 places in my mind. One, I like to listen especially to nonfiction that I never would have read otherwise. For example, I recently listened to Wash Shu's Stay True.
Okay.
Random, because I read him in the New Yorker, right?
Mhm.
And I know his name. And so I downloaded his audiobook and he read it and did a great job. I listen to things that are just entertaining. If I have to sign 21,000 tip sheets, and I'm not joking, that is how many tip sheets I had to sign for the Dutch House.
My Lord.
I listened to things, again, that I just never would have read. Oh, I listened to Isaac Mizrahi's I Am, right? That's a perfect example of what I want to listen to when I'm signing a tip sheet.
20,
Yep.
your name
Right.
20,000 times.
But then there's also the part of me that will listen to The Lighthouse or listening to Jeremy Irons read Lolita, which is a book I used to teach. I understood that book 100 times more when I listened to it.
Yeah.
So the audiobooks can fit into so many places. And my biggest revelation, which probably came about 10 years ago, I always thought that audiobooks were for long road trips.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest myth you guys have to bust.
Yeah.
It's for cleaning the house and brushing your
Yes.
teeth and lying in bed. And when you're on the plane and your eyeballs are too dry to read for another second.
Yep.
And even if you're just going around town running an errand, if you've always got an audiobook, you finish it so fast.
That
I
is
basically
so
always
true.
have an audiobook in my ears, basically, no matter what I'm doing. We always talk about how we're in like our house and like my wife and my kid, we all have AirPods on, like listening to different books as we're going about the house. And we're always
Right.
like taking one out and be like, did you say something? And then putting it back in, you know?
Okay, here's a question for the two of you. Do you ever speed them? Do you speed them up?
I do.
A little
Yeah.
bit.
Because I don't.
Oh, you're a 1Xer.
1.0.
Yeah, I am, which I think just makes me a novice. But everyone I
that.
know who's deep into audio, they speed up, and I can't speed up.
We actually, I'm dying to have another narrator. So we've spoken with some narrators on the podcast. We spoke with Julia Whalen, and I regret not asking her how she feels about that. Like a lot of narrators they're actors. It's like their craft. It's like their art to them. And
It's
I'm
very
like,
thoughtfully.
how do you feel if someone is like,
yes.
you spent all this time to make this beautiful thing, and then someone's like, 1.5, like
or 2.4.
It's speed, but it's speed reading. It's the same thing if
Yeah.
you write the book.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's my suggestion for somebody who would be great. Miley Malloy,
Okay.
who is one of my favorite authors, a dear friend. and the biggest consumer of audiobooks I have ever met in my life because she lives in Los Angeles.
Okay.
And she's
Yep.
A lot of
always
driving.
Yep.
always
Yep.
driving
In the car.
and is always asking me for audiobook recommendations. I think you guys should just like give her a bookseller account because her superpowers digesting audiobooks. It's
That's
incredible.
beautiful.
Yeah.
I love that. So Craig does the reading while listening simultaneously, and I do the reading on the page until the last minute. Now I'm like, okay, I have to get in the shower now. Then I turn on the audiobook where I left off,
I
and
do
then
that.
I switch back and forth, and I'm like, I've just gotten through this book twice as fast.
I
I'm
do
never
that.
not reading.
I did that with Isabel Wilkerson's Cast. And, it was a really long book.
Yeah.
So if I was moving, it was moving with me. But
Yep.
if I was home, I was reading it. And somehow mixing those two ways of taking in the book helped me get through the book. It's a brilliant book, but it's a tough book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's almost like I was bringing it in two different ways. It was really good.
I totally, I feel that. And when I talk about audiobooks, I find myself doing this gesture a lot.
Yes.
For some reason, it's very of the body to me.
Yes.
It's very visceral when I'm listening to it.
And for listeners, she is just moving her hands down her neck in front of her chest.
Yes.
Yeah, the feeling of it.
The
yes.
sign, the universal sign for visceral,
Yes,
whatever that may be.
Right. Have either of you ever listened to Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell?
I have
I
not
have,
listened
yeah.
to that. You have?
Yeah.
So fantastic.
It's really, really good as an audiobook.
One of my favorite books to read, and I decided I wanted to read it again, and I listened to it. Oh my God, so great.
Yeah, I really love audio for that type of genre, to be honest. Like out of any genre, I feel like that's the perfect one for audio. It's just
Yeah.
perfect.
Well, so we mentioned this to transparently, Anne knows about this. Before we started recording, we mentioned to you that last night we decided we were going to try a new podcast segment on you. This is our Libro lightning round. Is that what we're calling this, Craig?
Yeah, let's go with that. Yeah, the Libro lightning round.
Work in progress.
Yeah. We'll workshop it later. But as Craig mentioned, a lot of us on this trip have met each other for the first time in person at Libro.fm. And so we've been asking each other a lot of, what's your favorite, this type of thing questions as a fun way to learn about each other. So we would like to ask you
Bring it on.
some random questions. And I think Craig has the first one.
Yeah, so our first one is, what was your first job?
Cleaning houses. Probably when I was 13.
Sure.
I started cleaning not like I had a business, but there were a couple of people whose houses I cleaned. And then when I was 15, I got a job in a shop that sold a lot of brass and silver, and I would go and polish the brass and silver.
Nice.
I am a cleaner.
Oh yeah, me too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Also another perfect audiobook activity.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Very much so. Anne, what is your favorite candy?
Licorice.
Same.
Yeah. And I go both ways.
Okay.
You like black licorice?
Black is licorice.
Oh, okay.
Black licorice is licorice.
That
Okay.
is the definition.
Yes. But unlike some black licorice lovers, I like a red licorice,
Mhm.
and I like a good and plenty if it's fresh.
Okay.
I always say my first novel, The Patron Saint of Liars, was written entirely on Winston's and good and plenty. And I gave up the cigarettes, but I never gave up
Not the
Good and Plenties.
licorice. Yep.
Never the licorice.
Follow-up question.
Good. Go deeper.
Twizzler or red vine?
Twizzler.
Same. All right. Yes,
I
we
never
have this
heard
in
of red
common.
vine until this trip. Is this
Yeah.
like a?
You
I
didn't
looked
have
it
a
up
red
I
vine
looked it
on.
up on Google, and that didn't help. I wasn't like I was like, oh, those. I literally have never heard.
You've
of them.
never even.
Nope.
Oh,
Okay, now this is
interesting.
very brief, but you've got to know this for your own safety. A friend of mine goes to Iceland regularly, the wonderful novelist Patrick Ryan, and I asked him to bring me some licorice back from Iceland because it is the capital of licorice.
Okay.
And I ate 2 bags of licorice, not huge, just like normal size bags, but I ate 2 of them. And I got
in a single
no,
sitting?
like over 3 days.
Okay.
Okay.
And I got these hard, red, hot marbles in every joint of my fingers.
Oh my god.
And I couldn't bend my hands. And my husband's a doctor, and I was like, what is going on? And this seems really serious. And he said, it's the licorice. And I said, oh, get It is not the licorice. Just because you don't like licorice doesn't mean that you can blame everything on licorice. And I went to the doctor with my stiff, swollen hands, and she said, it's the licorice.
Really?
Because licorice in other countries is not licorice here. And in Iceland, there is actually a Surgeon General's warning on licorice, just like cigarettes, that eating too much of it can kill you.
Oh my God.
But it's so delicious. It's so good.
We're like, I'm going to roll the dice on this.
And I had some more, and I brought it into the bookstore.
Wait, you had some more after the...
No, I had some more bags.
Oh, okay.
So I brought it in, and I was like, okay, we can each have one piece. It can be like licorice communion.
Yes.
We can't binge on licorice, but we can eat it responsibly.
Amazing.
Thank you so much for this information.
Yes.
You may have saved my life.
Yes, it's a PSA.
Oh my God. Donuts or bagels?
Donuts.
Okay. What's
Yeah.
your favorite donut place in Nashville?
Oh my God, it's just right here, and this is where you'll go when you're finished.
I think our coworkers are there right now.
Here. It's the Donut Den. It's how we tell everyone where we are. We're behind the Donut Den.
Nice.
It's where I used to go in high school after play practice because it was so glamorous because it was open late. They have a brilliant apple fritter, a brilliant old fashioned. I am a team cake donut. And they also have a cronut, which is the deep fried croissant cut into the shape of a donut. It will change your life.
Does it also have a Surgeon General warning on
Right?
it? Yeah.
Right?
It should.
And
the cronut.
whenever Tom Hanks came to visit us at the store, he would go over and buy a cronut at the Donut Den. So they love us very much, and they bring us free donuts all the time, which is a bit of a problem.
If there were no logistics to deal with in this following scenario, just no complications.
Yes.
If you could move to any city other than Nashville tomorrow, where would you live?
Gosh. I'm going to tell you the two cities that I was the happiest living in, Missoula, Montana, and Provincetown, Massachusetts.
Provincetown.
Oh my
I'm
God.
from Massachusetts, and I love P-Town.
And back in the, really back in the 80s, before it was clean and rich, unbelievable. So many places. We went to Paris in May. My husband and I were like, Paris, we could live here.
I thought for sure that's what you were going to say. I absolutely adored the essay about you traveling in Paris with your friend when you were like 20 years old or whatever it was.
Right.
It was the scene like it's a movie. the part where you're talking about them having tattoos and they were so glamorous and they must be an artist and a poet or whatever.
That's right, because we had never seen a tattoo on a woman. Never once. This was like 1983. It was so radical, and it turns out it was a rub-on.
In the essay, you said you were going to like you were considering getting a tattoo, but you basically had no money.
A small cow.
I was going to get a little cow. Yeah.
Did you ever get?
No, I never got my ears pierced either.
Oh, really?
Yeah. No, I'm really, really glad to have sat that whole thing out.
Nice.
Yeah.
I have some regrettable tattoos, so I don't blame you.
we were discussing this yesterday. Yes.
So speaking of Nashville, and this is actually it's my first time in Nashville. I think it's Karen's as well. What is the like best kept secret? Like everyone says, like go to downtown and go to the bars. Like what is your
picnic? Whenever anybody says, I want to go someplace that a tourist would never go, the picnic. They have chicken salad, tuna salad, and egg salad. It's just where everybody goes to have a sandwich.
Sure.
And it's delicious. And it's in the parking lot where Publix is. So just look up the Picnic Cafe and go have a tuna sandwich. And you will not see a tourist, and everybody will believe that you live here. However, if they say, is this your first time here? Then you will know that you have failed.
Oh, no.
And if you say yes, they will give you the most delicious cookie you've ever had.
This is a good secret.
So a double-edged sword.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
But
they know you're from out of town, but they feel sorry for you, and they're going to give you a cookie.
Yeah, I mean, I'm willing to give myself away as a tourist for a free cookie. I think.
Likewise. I will sell myself out for food. Yes.
Okay. All right.
Not Icelandic licorice, but a Nashville.
Tell them Ann Patchett sent you. Tell them Reese Witherspoon sent you. The picnic is all about Reese. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Love it.
Follow one final question.
Okay.
One lightning round question. I feel like this is very topical
Sure.
right now as we are entering autumn and spooky season. What is your favorite season and why?
I would say spring. We do a really good job with spring here in Nashville. We do a bad job with summer. We really do a pretty bad job with winter. But we do an absolutely class AAA job with spring. And we can do a good job with fall. That depends on the rain.
Okay.
It's beautiful here right now.
Right now, it is absolutely lovely, but it's really dry. So if it's too dry for too long, the leaves will be green and then they'll just croak and fall off the tree. If we get some rain, then we can have a real fire show.
Nice.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, we have made it to the end of the
first
podcast
ever
here.
lightning round.
Yes. Thank you for our inaugural Libro lightning round.
You did such a good job. You were really great. And I kept waiting for your favorite audiobook question.
Yeah, thank you for bringing us there.
Yeah, guys.
We buried the lead on that.
Yes.
Really push the product up front.
We are
See,
clearly.
That's what I'm doing. You've got to learn to be the mascara. That's your
Yes.
mantra. I will be the mascara. I will push the product
That
out
is the quote of the podcast.
This is good. Yes, the name
Be
of the
the
episode.
mascara.
Be the
Yes.
mascara you want to see in the world.
Yeah. Oh my God. Well, thank you so much. Not
Thank
only
you,
for being on the
Ann.
podcast, but for letting us use your amazing bookstore as a location and letting us pet your dog.
Hey, it's been a blast. And, I will always follow in Emma Straub's shoes. So where she goes, I will follow.
Thank you so much. This has been a wonderful, and it's only 10 o'clock in the morning. Like this day is just going to be amazing.
Well, we do have to go to the opera and picnic and open up.
Opry.
Oh, okay.
You don't, if you're going to the opera, you're going back to New York. If you're going to the Opry, then you're in Nashville.
Okay.
The Grand Old Opry.
There
Grand
goes
Ole
my
Opry.
trying to pass myself off as a local. Where's my free
Here's a
cookie?
cookie.
Oh, actually, this is a great story. I'm just going to stick this one in the end. You can edit it out.
Nope.
Rita Wilson, this was right before the pandemic, was singing at the Opry. And so Tom said, come to the Opry. And because we have like 3 hours in between sets where we're just sitting in the back. So my husband and I went. My husband had never been to the Opry before. And they have a warm-up person who's like, hey, everybody, who's from D.C.? Woo! And she goes around to all the different states and everybody's shouting. And she's like, okay, I know there's nobody in the house from Tennessee. And there wasn't. And we did not go woo-woo, but it's incredible. No one in Nashville goes to the Opry.
Wow.
So unlike the picnic, where it's only people who live here,
Sure.
the Opry, nobody lives here, but it's really fun.
That's
Okay.
interesting. Why?
Yeah.
Why is that? You think?
We're tired of it. It's been around forever.
Sure.
And have you had a Goo Goo cluster?
I don't know what
No.
that is.
Okay, that's the official candy of the Grand Ole Opry. Say Goo Goo for candy. That's the ad.
Okay. It doesn't kill you,
GOO.
does it?
No, it's like a turtle.
Oh, yes. Okay.
Pecan, marshmallow, caramel, chocolate.
Sure.
Yep.
They're really quite
A
delicious.
Goo Goo cluster?
Okay, just the way you're saying that.
Craig has
means
a
you're doomed.
very skeptical
Goo
look
Goo
on his face.
cluster? If you go to the Country Music Hall of Fame,
Okay.
that is tremendous. It is a museum of sound. It is the most interesting museum. It has the best gift shop in Nashville where you can buy a black T-shirt that says cash in rhinestones on the front, which is really what you want. You can go to Hatch Show Prints, which is in the building of the Country Music Hall of Fame. And that's where they have all the old broadsides from the old Grand Ole Opry shows.
Oh, cool.
And then right across the street is the Goo Goo store. You can buy Goo Goos anywhere. You can get them in a gas station. It's like Goo Goos are to Nashville as licorice is to Iceland.
Okay.
Gotcha.
Okay.
You're the Goo Goo capital of
But
the world.
if you
yeah.
go to the Goo Goo store, you can get like a little onesie that says, I say Goo Goo on it.
I
It's really great.
don't know if I could order it with a straight face. Can I have Give me your finest goo-goo.
You don't have to say anything. You just pick it up and take it to the cash register.
There's
not asking you to talk.
No
about
conversation needed.
It's like a Snickers bar.
I have my microphone. I'm like doing a podcast.
If this happens later today, Anne, I will film it and I will send you the footage so that we can all see how Craig does with this.
You'll laugh at me.
Yeah.
I'm going to the opera and getting a goo-goo.
Also, if you have the chance.
Opry.
Yeah, don't say opera.
Yeah.
It's like you just put a target on your back. You can also go to the Parthenon.
Oh, yes. So my family's from Kentucky, and the Parthenon is the one thing I remember about being in Nashville many years ago. And I kind of wondered if I had dreamt it, but this is real, right?
Did you see the giant statue of Athena? Did you go inside?
I didn't go inside.
The largest indoor statue in the world, friends. I'm giving you all my hot tourist tips. It'll take you exactly 4 minutes round trip from your car to walk in, buy a ticket, see that statue. It will change your life.
Awesome.
You will call me up and say, Ann Patchett, thank you. I don't know what to make of that, but thank you for bringing it to me.
But it has happened. Okay, we must do this today.
We have so many afternoon plans. I'm tired already.
Yeah, get out of here. Pack up your microphones and go.
Yes.
You've got an agenda.
Well, on that note, I think that is the perfect way to end this podcast.
Thank you so much. This has been amazing.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to our interview, everyone. Craig and I, as always, would like to talk about what audiobooks we are listening to and enjoying. But before we do, I had a story that I wanted to tell. And I'm sorry, Craig, you've heard this 3 times. I think I texted you as soon as this happened, but I'm just really excited.
I love this story. I'm here for it.
So last weekend, I went to Literati in Ann Arbor, which is my favorite bookstore. And I go there way too much. All the time. I went last night too.
You go there constantly.
I know. It's wonderful. I love it there. And this particular day, however, I was purchasing, amongst other things, Kiesi Lehman's book, Heavy, from a Banned Books table. And the bookseller, as I was checking out, said, I just listened to a really great podcast episode about banned books, and Kiesi was on it. And I said, what podcast was it? And they were like, oh, I can't remember. It had a bunch of other people on it. I then said, was it the Libro.fm podcast? And they said, yes, do you listen to that one too? And I was like, I'm Karen. And then we had a lovely moment and it was amazing. And I was so excited and like floating on a little cloud after that moment that I then rolled my ankle in the street walking through the bookstore.
Oh my God. How is your ankle doing, by the way?
It's fine. It was important. It kept me from, getting an ego about someone listening to our podcast, I guess.
I love that.
Anyway, thank you, wonderful bookseller at Literati, for listening to our podcast. If you're hearing this episode and for making my day.
The next time you go in there, if they do hear this, it's going to be even weirder moment.
Like, stop talking about me. Anyway, Craig, I would love to know more about what you are currently reading and enjoying.
I am reading, and I apologize if I screw up this pronunciation, but I am reading A Man Called Uwe, which is by Frederick Bachman. I had read his other book, Anxious People, a while ago and somehow missed this one. So this book's actually not new. It's a few years old, but when we were in Nashville and sitting in the Airbnb, and I think like at 10 o'clock, everyone was like, we're so tired, we should go to bed. And then somehow we started talking about books and we were all like sitting on the rug in the living room. And then did that for like 3 hours. So everyone was exhausted the next morning, but it was so fun.
So for everyone who's listening, you can now rest assured that working at Libro.fm is exactly like what you think it is. We just talk about books all the time.
Yes, it was amazing. It was such a lovely moment. But this book came up, and I think you, Maddie, Alyssa, like 3 people were like, I loved this book. So I added it to my like to be read pile, and that's what I just read. And it was really fun. It's basically about this old man who's going through a really big bout of grief. And he's like a grumpy old man who yells at everybody in his like housing area. And he's like really crotchety and really a stickler for the rules and old school. And this like new young family moves in beside him and yada, yada, yada. It's like a very uplifting-y type of story that has a lot of like tough parts too, though. And it's a movie as well, which is fun. I really liked the movie. Actually, it was a very rare time that a movie does a good job, I think, of adapting. There you go, adapting a book. I love books that have movie adaptations. One of my favorite
too.
things to do is like sit there and pause the movie and say, in the book, this is actually what happened. It's a little bit different.
You sound really fun to watch movies with.
Oh, the worst, the absolute worst. If you love a grumpy old man pausing a movie to complain 50 times, I am a great person to watch a movie with. Otherwise,
awesome.
Yeah. Yep. Just whispering in a theater. This is different than the movie. This is different than the book.
Get this guy out of here.
Yep. That would be me. What about you? What are you reading right now?
So, in preparation for our future recording, am I allowed to say this with V.E. Schwab?
Cat's out of the bag. Yes, this is the highlight of my life right now, listeners. We had emailed V.E. Schwab's people because that is like my dream guest, and they didn't respond right away, and I was sad. And then like weeks later, it was like, sorry for the delay. She's down. And that's like the best thing that's ever happened.
I thought Craig was going to actually die.
Oh, I did. I'm a ghost now. Unfortunately, it's not until like June or something. So we have plenty of time to prepare.
You can get your fanboy act together between now and then so that you don't like weep.
I think that I cannot get my act together, actually.
There's no amount of time great enough to prepare.
Yes. But that gives you time to read all the books.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Extra credit for me. I'm a great student. I started early. I am reading Vicious and I love it. I am slowly reading it. I'm savoring it one chapter at a time.
That's how I like to read books as well, one chapter at a time. It's quite hard to read multiple chapters at the same time.
You know what I mean? Come on. Anyway.
Well, there is a sequel, so you'll have a little bit more Victor and Eli to read when you're done.
One of my favorite things about Victor is that he is basically an expert in found poetry. He's doing these erasures of letters and things in his home. And that is a way that I also love to write poetry. So lots of relatable content.
It's even better than that. It's not letters in his home. It's his parents' self-help books that he hates.
Oh, his parents. Yes,
so
that's
good.
Right.
I love those books. Yeah. And I'm not a big fan of superhero things at all. Like I don't like Marvel movies. I mean, to each their own. Like I'm glad those movies exist and people love them, but they're not for me. And I wouldn't say this is like a superhero book, but it definitely dips its toes into that territory, and I still love it.
For sure.
Because V.E. Schwab does no wrong.
Because V.E. Schwab, period. End of sentence.
Yes. Well, that's awesome. I'm glad you're getting to enjoy those books. I can't wait to hear what you think about them. Well,
thank you. And what is the stuff we say at the end?
If you want to listen to Vicious, you can use...
If any of these books that we discussed sound interesting to you, also Ann Patchett's books, all of the books, you can listen to them on Libro.fm. If you haven't started a membership yet, you can do so using promo code Libro Podcast, and you will get an extra free credit when you start your membership. So that's 2 books for your first month. Vicious and the sequel in month 1. You can do it.
Yes. I love that. That's what everyone should do with that promo code. Go support V.E. Schwab and your local bookstore. On that note, thanks for listening, everyone.